fascinating to sort of see what other people's experiences are. Like, how you going with your dad? How's that? What do you, you know? Because I'm again going through the same. I mean, I get on great with my son, but you know, it has its own thing. So again, I just find it's an interesting topic.
It's
Oh,
fucking androids. It's like Star Wars. They're useless.
punch the wrong way, you know. Won't be the won't connect. Because it was saying anyway. That's right. There, bud. You are locked in. So how many minutes we got?
You get 5 whole minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, so we'll all right. Do you want me to back up bottle?
Yeah, might get some backup water.
Yeah. Well, so we'll take that. Oh, excuse me.
So I just sent you a bunch of links.
That's cool. That can have the links.
That one slightly darker than this one.
Which one?
That one over there.
This one, yeah. But like, there's nothing in the light at the moment.
So on this one here.
Yeah, good point. I guess I had to consider the face.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that getting full face in the
No.
No.
Last chance for toilets, everyone.
Last chance for toilets.
An hour and a half. Strap in.
Oh my going for, young man, you? What do you know of God?
Sweet spot found.
Studio in the city, I've spelled that right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's doing how to do these, maybe? Yeah. Right, I'm going to save it.
Alright. The jug.
You got a jug?
Yeah.
Where can we put the water without being dangerous?
Well, I think anywhere on the floor here, just on your side, mate.
Oh,
yeah. I'll get actually, I should get a couple myself. How many minutes? What's the countdown at?
Sorry, it's like a minute 20.
Minute 20. Okay.
Right, we're back in
Less than a minute.
I feel super nervous having the water there.
I'm going to the bathroom.
Look at that.
Yeah. 57 seconds. Oh, that's the question, isn't it? Oh, it's a race against time. always on silver. But I probably should check this. Okay.
No one ever calls me. So.
I'm actually doing this.
Yeah.
I just don't want to spill it up here. Spill it on there, it's fine. You know what I mean?
10 seconds.
10 seconds. I'm going to start without Jack.
Yeah.
Quick! You fucking serious? Yep, 10 seconds. That's yours, mate. I got one over here.
G'day, g'day, wherever you may be. Yes. Did I get it right? Did I jump in early?
Oh yeah, Lynn's a bit.
Did I prematurely
Yeah, you can.
enter? No. How's it going, fuckers? Welcome to another edition of Mastering Music, Mastering Life. I'm your host, Tony Jack the Bear Mance, and I'm absolutely thrilled to pieces to have as my guest on this week, my friend, Mr. Tom Larkin.
How are you, sir?
Good to see you again,
You
mate.
too. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
It's your birthday. How many times around the sun?
54.
54.
54, mate.
Solid number.
It is. Studio 54. So, yeah. No, it's good. It's good. Well, you know, I can throw every cliche at you, mate. It's like age is a number and all that.
All that, yeah.
But it's true. It's true. I feel better now at 54 than I have for many, 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 many years. So, yeah, you know, but everyone's go through their own journey with that kind of shit.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
So, anyway, beautiful to have you here, mate.
You too.
Thanks for taking time out.
No problem.
Sunday night and all that.
There you go.
Fuck, you've been busy, man.
I have been busy. It's been a very, very interesting and compressed year.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, but it's been very, very positive.
Yeah.
I've had so far we've kind of had basically everything that I've been doing has been kind of exploding.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah.
so what? All right. Well, since the last time you did the last podcast here,
Mhm.
a while ago, I mean, shit, your management company's just gone fucking pretty. I mean, you've always said the management, but that's really starting to sort of come.
We've moved in with another management company,
Mhm.
so we've formed a partnership, and we've taken on a bunch of new bands, and we've also got another couple of people working with us, and so it's a whole new joint venture, and it's called Triple V Management, and I'm working with an amazing woman called Ash Hills, who's was part of the 123 agency, booking agency. She comes from there, and was managing acts. One of the acts she manages a band called Woodlock.
Yep.
And we've brought her into this venture, and she's been an absolute demon. So really enjoyed working with her. Absolutely.
That's great, mate.
So yeah.
So you got that, and obviously, because when we last spoke, we're still in the early stages of Signal.
Yep.
Right. Artist Accelerator.
Yep.
Which I want to get more into that because, you know, I think that what you've, because I remember you came to me and you said, look, here, I want to run something past you. Here's the early kind of idea, and I loved it. As someone who, I mean, I'm not an educator per se, or neither have I written a course, but I've been around in our schools over the years, speaking at various places, and again, the thing that struck out with me was, and I said we'll go more into it later, but just the different approach you bring into it, and that's why I've become such a vocal advocate.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where it was born out of looking at the needs as I saw them, trying to make what I wanted to see happen in the industry work, and where I'd see gaps in support that was there, and gaps in information that was there, and gaps in mindset, and that's probably the big one.
Oh yeah.
You know, is the kind of training and mindset deficiencies in certain areas. It's about how to think of things, how to take on what's happening to you, how to read it.
Yeah.
And you know, read it so that it doesn't overwhelm you, either positively or negatively.
Yeah. So, and you've also, which has been amazing too, mate, just all your work with mental health. And I mean, a lot of people hadn't seen it. You're on the project a few weeks back, and video went gangbusters, but it was good, man. You know, again, just as someone from our industry who can speak as eloquently as you do, to talk about such a big issue that, you know, you and I have discussed this many times privately, but I think that that's what we need now is more
open dialogue and to help people, first of all, know that mental illness is, there should be no shame about it, because 3 out of 5 in our community, as you said, are affected by it. But also to try and get through some of the misinformation around it and help people with strategies and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's brilliant, mate. That's absolutely.
No, it's. I mean, that has been something that's precipitated out of the work that I've done, and kind of which of course first started off as writing a book, and then turned into this artist development course called Signal. But one of the major gaps that I saw was around this idea of, how mental health plays into living an artistic life. And I think that although the subject is finally starting to crack open, and I think that, everyone I talk to in the industry gets it. They get it. But I think that there is also another frontier to it, which is about optimizing how you work. And it's one thing to recognize the negative aspect and the downsides of not handling the propensity for mental illness that this vocation and artists within that vocation have. But the other side of it is, once you understand that, it's also about tuning in the stuff that you can use to really do better work, to do better art, to create more, to do it for longer, to explore more, all those things. And that's actually, for me, the next stage. I'd like to see, I've often kind of said it, but I'd like to see the idea of someone struggling with mental health to be as, or having overcome it, or having to, and having dealt with it in some way, as having the same stigma as having the flu or a cold. That, to me, like, if we can get to that as a society, I think we've really advanced.
No, most definitely. Because the thing is, the truth is that despite the fact that there has been, over the last few years, there's been campaigns to create more awareness and all that kind of stuff, and it's wonderful. But I do
think it's shifting.
Definitely. Because, like I said, more campaigns, more awareness, but still got a fair bit to go. But it requires people like yourself, myself, others within the industry, and doesn't necessarily have. I mean, it helps when you do it in a more public way, because you want to get the message out to as many as others. But never underestimate even the little things you do for people. Checking in on how you're going, all right, mate, and a lot of people don't want to be hassled, and some people don't want to impose on others. But again, it's the little things that we all do collectively that's going to make the difference. Because, like you said, mate, we're all affected by it profoundly, whether it's been directly or indirectly. So it's no longer the white elephant, No. Yeah. So I think, again, mate, I commend you for that. I think it's great. Like, I never thought I'd sit down with Tom Larkin and we'd be talking about that, but in a constructive and positive way. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's interesting for me, because I never actually thought of it as something that I would end up doing or talking about. And it's funny to look back. 45 years old now, and it's funny to look at the threads that have actually arrived at this point. And it comes to do with the experience of it and the frustration of it, and basically looking at just what seemed obvious in terms of generating better outcomes. You have this whole kind of, often called psychosocial factors, which are really situational. The environment that you're in, the emotional climate that you're in, all these things have a large impact on how this works. And what I realized was that, watching that play out in a band, where not managing it and not understanding it meant that, things became much more randomized. What you were trying to deal with could be chaotic, on a day-to-day basis. You never knew where you stood. And then trying to kind of understand that from the point of view of being able to manage it long term. How do we do this better? And then there were the other sides of it, which were, there were certain times when, the band that I was in, or the environments that I were in, got it really right. And some of those things were counterintuitive. And that kind of brought me to and I think possibly the greatest example of that were producers that I'd worked with. Because you realize that the art of production is often the art of the psychological climate in which a record is made. And that if you have an artist who has all this talent and ability, often what can either be preventing them or propelling them to make great art is the climate and the psychosocial environment that they're in. And I realised that the best producers that I did have worked with had an almost a masterful grip on being able to do that. Now, that didn't mean that it was always positive.
Okay.
And one of the things that I found really interesting about, a group of kind of, 40-year-olds, which She Hard were when we made our last album, was the fact that having someone who essentially screamed at us was actually really good. But I think, that's obviously not going to work for every artist by any means, because, but it's about that particular chemistry worked really well because you've got a bunch of people playing aggressive music who, are older and have responsibilities that far exceed the kind of like what they're supposed to do on a given day within a band. And that means a lot of distraction comes into play, a lot of other agendas are on, have responsibilities as fathers, as business owners, all that kind of thing. And to have someone who comes in and goes, none of it matters, and the only thing that matters is this, and while we do this, I don't want anything else in here. I mean, I had to take, a huge one. I remember this was Jazz Coleman, and I remember him in one pre-production session looking at me, and I'm like tapping my phone, and I'm, in the middle of him talking, I'm tapping my phone, emails coming in like this, and he goes, John, mate, if you fucking look at your phone one more time, I fucking swear I'm going to smash it against the wall. Now, you can kind of go, oh, that's a bit rough. But it was what I needed to hear right then and there. If someone had said it to me any other way, I would have just been like, whatever. This is important.
Go fuck yourself.
But and sometimes when dealing with like I said, it's this chemistry thing that for us worked great. For other people it wouldn't necessarily.
Funny the whole fucking screen thing, mate. Someone put a meme out the other day. I can't remember the quote but something that George Orwell was saying back when he wrote 1984, back in fucking 50, whatever it was, that the people would be, then the people wouldn't get their heads up from their screens, because they were being distracted and stuff. And it's just like how fucking crazy and prophetic that was, so someone could think of something like that. And here we are. Like, it's like, I'm just as guilty too, man.
Totally.
It's something that requires discipline, and I have to sort of remind myself, hang on, okay, I'm having lunch with someone, like it can wait. If it's that important, you'll ring 5-6 times in a row. Then okay, something's up. But yeah, man, it's we're so sucked into this whole social media world, and yes, we can say, it's part of the marketing, it's part of what we do, and it's a given that we all have socials, but fuck, man, it's just like, where do you draw that fucking line?
Well, I mean, I think, as a society, we're on the, we are determining that right now. And, it's one of those things that when I was growing up, it was playing with toy guns and watching too much television, And nowadays I look at my kids who have a very, very strong social media sense of the outside world and relate to it. Like my daughter, who's 8 years old, she relates to YouTube stars. Like for her, it's like Taylor Swift and Katy Perry, and I can't remember some of the names of the stars, but whoever it is who does a YouTube channel on Roblox, and that's like her world, and that figure is just as important as a Taylor Swift to her. You know what I mean? And so, and she's able to have that on demand as she wants. She's just able to fall into it. And like all parents, sometimes you get into that situation where you go, man, we've just both come home and we're exhausted, and oh, she's on the iPad. Cool. We can have a break for a minute. And that's part of the modern world, and I think it's not that that's strictly responsible to do that. I mean, I think that you've got to manage that as parents, and we do, because experiences are tremendously important to children, and if you think back on your own childhood, experiences are massive.
Totally.
But it is now the world that we navigate.
That's it.
And one of the more interesting things that we've had with my daughter and this kind of frontier on it is that because she's so into the idea of being a YouTuber, she wants to be a drawer, a singer, and a YouTuber. And it's like, well, why don't you combine all of them? So she's developed her own YouTube channel, which is about how to draw Pokemon, right?
Yeah, right.
And we were like, one of the things we're really conscious of is how the comments are going to play out, because above a certain level, the comments on YouTube get pretty vicious.
Yeah.
So we're vigilant about, how that is, and we're not terribly big on kind of like trying to promote it or anything like that. It's just she's got it there and she's developing a skill set. But she took it to school and kind of showed everyone, and at that point it was great, awesome, and then we kind of 2 days, 48 hours later, it's like, we don't want to know about that anymore because certain parents have a real problem with the idea of this going on. So so it's those areas that we're pushing on now that are developing, whether a child, someone who is not necessarily developed has actually a worldwide audience.
Yeah.
That's actually where it's at.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing to think though that we live in a time right now where you can just, in front of a lappy on your mobile device, you can just you're out there in the whole fucking world now. It's crazy.
We're doing it now.
Yeah. Oh, we are. We are.
It's funny. It's like this actually feels more like an actual TV studio than you'd think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lights in front, 3-camera shoot, team, all this shit.
Yeah.
It feels pro as.
No. Well, I've always said, mate, I'll never be able to dazzle you with brilliance or buff you with bullshit. So it's all smoke and mirrors and illusions into the sleight of hand and all that kind of stuff, mate. But so listen. So tell us a bit about, just because as I said earlier on, I really wanted to put a focus on Signal, man. Yeah. Because I'm such a believer in it. Certainly. It's a very new thing, but in terms of conceptually what you're bringing out. So how did it all come about? What is Signal? Why do you think people would want to come to? What sets you apart from all the other things? I guess, and because I think if a kid's going to go out there and drop X amount of money, because there's a lot of money being spent. I'm all for education. As a rule, formal audio school is fantastic. That shit didn't exist when I was growing up. No, it didn't exist fucking New Zealand when you were growing up. But for me, it's more about, at what point does it not become value? And I just question sometimes if what does, like, 40,000 plus sometimes one of these courses will go for. And I'm not saying that these kids aren't going to they're getting knowledge, they're getting all that sort of stuff, but how will they actually be prepared for the real world? Yeah. Yeah. I just recently took on a young kid who went to RMIT, but the kids that I have here, for the most part, they've studied to a degree, but they haven't sort of done 2 or 3 years of audio and dropped 50,000, and so for me, I think there's got to be other options. There's got to be better ways, and more pertaining more to the how do you best groom kids to operate in the world, and I think one of the things that always baffled me, but I guess it does now because it's from my own experience, but mindset and shift in mindset is everything. As a late bloomer to the party, I've noticed how profound it was for me, and that's really, to be honest, Tom, what has driven the direction I'm taking in life. This podcast, because it's about reaching out predominantly to kids, music, artistic creatives, and talking about the stuff that matters. And when it comes, so going back to the whole thing about school, is that yourself, you can have a kid who's got fucking crazy theory and all that sort of stuff, but as I said the other day when I was talking to my new guy Tom, but when someone's in the studio and is observant, and then we'll realise, there's a pattern going on here. So the last time when he was at this point, he went to burn a CD. So he said, hey, Tony, you want to go burn a CD? Remember I told you said, I love that shit. You can't teach this out in a book necessarily. Yeah. But you can encourage people to think about these kind of things. What are the things that for you as an employer, as myself, what do we look for? Exactly. And wonderful to have know all your fucking have perfect pitch and know your theory inside out. But what about how you do it with clients and how do you act in the facility? When do you shut the fuck up? When do you not? Totally. You know what I mean? Initiative, that sort of stuff. So I think that with what you're offering and what we're going to try and do is not try what we will do when our Dalesford thing goes up and running next 2-3 years is try to provide it's not a school, but it's a facility, but give kids work experience in a real situation, because schools have their studios and whatever, but they're not in the actual. It's like a fighter can train at the gym all the time, but when they're actually in a real street fight.
This was the whole thing I mean, I was reading about it. I'm not that knowledgeable about it, but I saw the parallel where they're talking about Bruce Lee when he came to America and how he essentially kind of shat on the codes of, you know, karate and all this kind of stuff. And his whole point was that as soon as you hit in the face, it all goes out the window.
Exactly.
And I think that was one of the things that I would notice. You kind of notice that, like I said, one of my formative experiences as a late teenager was applying for jazz school. And I had, and there were amazing musicians up there and amazing teachers up there. However, what I realized was that because it was siloed, it was like this jazz conservatorium, they went very, very deep into the kind of, this is how it works, and this is, you know, this is the jazz kind of, you know, mindset, and this is how you have to be, ethos and everything like that. Some of that was great, but on a practical level, we're in a city of 350,000, and there were only this many jobs that these kids could go to, and all the tutors had the jobs.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so straight away you're talking about a training problem that doesn't actually marry with the real world properly.
Yeah.
And whilst you go there to learn the craft aspects of it, which I think it was tremendous at, in terms of real world application, it didn't stand up. And I think that is often where the larger music educational colleges, although they try to bridge the gap, I think that is the one part of it that is not properly looked at as to how that actually shows up and implements in the real world. And one of the things that happened with that jazz school, for instance, is that I actually auditioned for it, and my drum teacher at the time, a really good guy called Bud Jones, he failed me. Maybe I failed because I was shit, but you know, he basically, I remember him saying after it, "This is not the place for you," and he was right, and it was a blessing because when you think about these things, and I remember it was like my parents were really, you know, that I was doing all this other stuff, but they really liked the context of a qualification, the context of a jazz school, and everything like that. But he saw that no, what you're actually doing everywhere else that doesn't have anything to do with a qualification is actually far more what you need to be doing. Your DNA is suited to this, and you should go on with that. Yeah. And so that was a blessing. And of course, I'd actually left school to audition and train to audition for this. So it was a real moment of kind of like, oh my God, you know, our son is not going to actually go into tertiary education at all. Right. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
How like growing up, I mean, growing up, my dad was very much from academia, and so for him, that's what he wanted. You know, for me, because he never got to do his medical degree. But how supportive were your family when you know, as you were sort of, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I have this, you know, what I regard now, and I look back on it as a really unusual upbringing. And in particular, you know, I would have to say that my parents were, you know, incredibly supportive of the music thing. They had their doubts, but they weren't overtly ever negative about it. They encouraged me very much. At the same time, the kind of makeup of the household was, you know, as I said, unusual. One of the things I had was a father who was significantly older, and I was the oldest of three kids, so significantly older. He's still alive now.
Bless him. How old is he now, Tom?
He's going to turn 100 this year.
100?
100.
So is
my dad.
What month? What?
In November 17th.
November 17th. So Lizzie in London will send him a.
He'll get a letter from the Queen.
He'll get a little.
It'll letter, yeah. He always cracked the joke that what happens when the Queen Mother turns 100.
Yeah.
You know, she gets a letter from her daughter.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, of course.
So JD has met you guys and was struck by how genuine you guys are, and sort of wants to know how in the music industry you sort of retain your humanity.
He says, I've met so many musicians over the years at gigs, and meeting you, Tom, really stood out because of how genuine and laid back you were. And then he says Kia Kaha, which I assume is...
Yeah, it's Kia Kaha, yeah.
That's James Jackson, that's out the way in the Gold Coast.
Excellent. Excellent.
Well, that's very complimentary.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. You go ahead. I got some thoughts.
Yeah, mate. I mean, look. I mean, I don't think. I think that you know, interactions with people in the music industry. One of the things I think about the music industry right now is that it's been, you know, particularly on the recorded side, has been so economically tough that the people who now survive the music industry or want to participate within the music industry are by and large lifers, and if they get anywhere significant and stay in there for over a 5 to 10 year period, they're for real. So I think that the economic climate of music has meant that the opportunists have kind of left the music industry, and that what you're dealing with now are people who really, really love music. And I think that that's changing the kind of culture now, and it's changing the DNA. And I think the other side of it, which we can talk about later as well in relation to Signal and what we're doing with the management company, is that the music industry, at least on the recorded side, has actually seen profit for the first time in 15 years of last year.
That's awesome.
So we're at this kind of base rate where I think by and large we're left with true believers, and young kids coming in for the most part are true believers, and we're about to see a period of growth for the first time in 15 years, and it's going to be driven by people who are very genuine.
Well, I think also one point that I think may have some validity is that unlike record companies per se, from your big, weren't run by necessarily musicians or artists, people that love music, people that have they've got their own talents, but it's still kind of businessmen, so as opposed to a lot of what is happening now being run by actual, you're an actual musician, you're an artist, you've been through the process. So coming from that, I think is you cannot help but have more empathy and feel for the people you're dealing with, and setting things up more accordingly. And this is why we're seeing the model. We've been in this huge state of flux in the industry the last 10 to 15 years of what's the model, where's it going to go. So now I know it's all about streaming, but as you said, more and more people now who are coming on board are doing so because their intention is really about their love of music, the love of what they see things they want to change, and think, okay, well I'll do something about it. So you saw the courses, go right, okay, well, and so yeah, but I still think there's always going to be opportunists. I think
there always will be.
We probably have more shit cunts around than we care. And that's not being judgmental, but there's always going to be opportunists, man. Anyone that could buck, and particularly with music, man, because musicians are so fucking vulnerable, and it's so easy to sell. Why do you think all these TV shows got, man? It's trying to sell a story, and it's great to have a dream, it's great to have an aspiration, but they're selling too much of this dream that, not that it's impossible, but by the same token, I think they're selling fantasy.
I agree. I mean, and to that end, I don't actually, and I think to anyone, I mean, one of my things is that for the most part, participating in something like X Factor or The Voice is similar to going into the porn industry to kind of build a serious acting career. It's about as viable.
Yeah.
But the thing that I would say is that, and I think the music industry hasn't concentrated on it, but I'm a big advocate for it, is that you can build a lifestyle. You don't necessarily get the dream. The dream is a unicorn event. It's a lotto win. Yep. But you can build a lifestyle. And it may take many years to build that. And you have to be patient. Yes. And you have to work really hard.
Absolutely.
And, it's that whole thing of being patient over the long-term arc, but being hardworking in the short term.
Yes.
So lots of energy and push in the short term, but being patient in the long term.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard thing to get across. But that's actually ultimately it, that you can build a lifestyle.
Most definitely.
If you've got enough talent and ambition, you can build a lifestyle around it.
And
patience.
Yeah, and as finding a niche. Everyone's got to find their own thing where they can serve people better or provide value in areas that probably aren't being as well catered for.
And sometimes the idea of what you're going to be doesn't necessarily translate into where you end up.
Yeah.
Like I said, one of the things that I never would have imagined for a million years that I'd be talking about how mental health affects musicians, and kind of having or feeling so passionate about it, and really wanting to see change there, and really wanting to see the world spin on that subject. But I do, I look back at everything I've seen and I go, my God, that's the one thing that if we can change, we can really make a world of difference.
And I think getting rid of the misconceptions, just like the really great point, when you were doing that project interview a few weeks back, was this smashing this myth of that artists always have to be in a real shit space and a real shit time to bring creativity to the fore, and yet and you're absolutely right. And I think
Yeah.
that's always been a common misconception. It's like, you got to be fucking out down the dumps, because that's historically so many people said, I wrote that song when it was on my last ebb, and blah, 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 and that has its place and it's true. But having said that, there's also the flip side of that, which is you don't have to be fucking down and out.
Yeah.
To be able to find that.
I think it comes through that, many people look at moments when an artist arrives, and they've often, what that piece of work is precipitated from a period of immense angst or immense crisis personally, and it can often be the teenage years or how they grew up, and they've dumped this thing in their early 20s that's really like, iconic. Yet you look at all those artists and they arrive at that moment and they've got that piece of work, but that mindset and the way they are then is not sustainable.
Yeah.
They don't get to roll it out. And you usually find that a lot of artists who try and hold on to that, they all of a sudden their life changes, what comes at them becomes different, and they can't find that original, kind of like angst that they had. Yet they're talented. And they have new things to talk about, and it's about that development and whether they're able to kind of move their brain, or move what they're seeing, not so much their creative process, but move what they're seeing into something that is just as deep and just as productive later on. Yeah. And I think that a lot of artists get into this trap that they've got to be the destructive artist for far too long. And the biggest problem with that is that can often last years to decades and becomes drug habits and behavior that is life threatening. Yeah. And that oftentimes holding on to that means that if they don't die soon, they end up with long-term health consequences that and that's the biggest thing. Most people, when we map the lives of musicians, most musicians don't die gloriously, leaving a beautiful corpse. Yeah. They die early, in bad circumstances. Yeah, sadly. For the most part. Yeah. Too early, leaving behind broken lives. Yeah, well, like I said, 57 was the average age of an artist. Dying. That's... Okay, if you're 20, 57 seems like a lifetime away. But it's only 27 years away. You know what I mean? I mean, sorry, 37 years away. But still, man, but when you think that the average male in Australia is going to live to... Is it late 70s, early 80s? Is it? I think it was 75, and then I think women are 80. Yeah. Okay. Like that, So even let's just say that. But that's rising, and But let's just assume that you only get 80, and 50s. 50s. There's still a lot to go from. They're from 57. Yeah. There's 23 there's almost a generation's worth of living. Totally. Well, I mean, and this is one of the weird things for me that contextualizes it really heavily, is that my father would have had me at around the age of 53. Wow. So what a stud, mate. What a stud. Well, it's like, no, I mean, I'm grateful for that. It doesn't, and I'm grateful for him still being here. Yeah. What was it like growing up? Yeah. As a kid and having a dad who I'm sure people may have mistakenly thought that he was the grandpa. Yeah. All the time. Yeah. I thought one of the things that he always recounts the story about this kid when I was going to school, and he always recounts how he saw this kid on the road, and the kid said, "Mr. Larkin, why are you so old?" And he just said, "Oh, I got tired of being young." But what was it like? Amazing in some ways, First of all, he's a World War II vet. Yeah. So, growing up with a father who's a World War II vet, has its stuff, right? And possibly, I think that one of the reasons I'm so kind of aware of the mental health stuff is what that generation had to suck up. Yeah. And how that turns into avoidance and turns into not recognizing things. I went to a show by a guy called Alan Cummings last night, who's on various TV shows. Yeah. He's a theatre guy, sings songs, and he talks about, he has this book around Not My Father, and then he has this BBC show called was it Where the Hell You Come From or something like that. Oh yeah. And Who Do You Think You Are? Who Do You Think You Are? And he had to look back on his ancestry, his ancestry, and there was this mystery around his grandfather. What happened to his grandfather? And so he had to go into that on the program. They finally got the resources to research where his grandfather came from. And he found out that his grandfather was a highly decorated, by the end of World War II, his grandfather was a highly decorated war veteran who became a captain, a major, I think, but died in Malaysia in the 50s and never came home to the UK.
Okay.
And he said when he got, from the Defence Department, all his records, there were these pages torn out of his records, which were around him suffering from PTSD, and they couldn't make him a captain or a major while those were in his records, so they removed the records. And his whole point was, here's the organisation that caused the problem, removing any trace of it, to do it, but he was still suffering from it. So, and you think about, and I kind of think about that in relation to my dad, and I know he's seen more hell than anyone in this room could put together.
No doubt.
And yet, he retained his kindness and his sweetness through it all. Yet there's the blind spot, which because they had to suck it up.
Well, it was a different era,
It's a totally different era.
It's funny. I mean, I know you would have seen it too, but this beautiful video of these two blokes, best mates, who are from an Adelaide radio station.
I saw the thing, and you posted it. I haven't had a chance to look at it,
mate. I'll tell you, I actually got misty watching it. It was beautiful, it was sensitive, it was honest, it was real, dude. And again, they just hit on these things that all of us would listen to and go, I feel it. Like and you did. You felt it. You absolutely felt it. But again, I was particularly impressed with those two because, again, they both were getting emotional about it and stuff, but it was raw, man. It was fucking raw. And as I put in my post, I said it's not just the fact that it's the dialogue that's important, but the fact that just blokes in general,
Totally.
who can sit down with each other, and women just do it anyway, and that's part of the reason they probably live longer, because they're emotional. It goes up, goes down. But it was blokes, again, conditioning. Big boys don't cry, yada yada. Suck it up, man up.
Totally.
Every cliche you want.
I think it comes down to, and this is the thing, is that vulnerability vulnerability and fragility as humans is this big area, and we don't recognise that. As a society, I don't think we recognise that being able to step forward and going into that place is the centre of strength. That when you're vulnerable, when you admit your weaknesses, when you can explore them properly, and you have the support to do it. I mean, and this is the biggest problem. A lot of people don't have that support to be able to do it. A lot of people don't have the family around them, or the friends around them, or the environment around that permits that kind of thing. And so it wells up inside, and it creates problems. And I think, what I'd like to see, and I think we're moving that way, is a society that's kinder about all that those kind of things.
Definitely.
Likewise, there's a guy who I've worked with a couple of times, and who's a really, really great psychotherapist, a guy by the name of Chris Stevens, and he often talks about this stuff, and he's very good about all the pressures that you're under and how these things turn into into problems. But he also points out, and I think this is the flip side, which is that there is a tendency, and you can sometimes see it, where people actually pathologize the stress of life. You know what I mean? You've got to watch out for that too. So it's about balancing the two things. It's about being able to express vulnerability safely, but at the same time not letting that bleed into, I can't pay my bills because I went drinking on Friday night, now I'm having a crisis. It's like, okay, there's actions and consequences there,
But personal responsibility, Tom Larkin. It's and it's interesting because I remember someone, intellectually understood it, but to actually really take it on board.
I still learn about that.
We all are. But if you look at it, it's this great word, responsibility. Because what does it mean? It means the ability to respond. And most of us don't respond as much as we react.
Well, I just like the idea of being able to go, blame is facing the past, and responsibility is right now. And what you can do about it today. You can point fingers and, it's the past. It doesn't really matter. All you've got to do is figure out what you're responsible for.
That's totally right, man. That's totally right. So, but just quickly, just to finish up on that video, is that the importance of talking about, but also just the blokes do it together, and it's great. And the last 2 years, you and I we've had some pretty deep conversations. But it's for me, it's like it's just so refreshing to be able to sit down. No, but it is, man, because
No,
again,
totally.
we're all affected by this shit.
Oh, totally.
And but sometimes people won't open up about stuff. But so again, this is vulnerability and the courage comes in.
Totally.
And then you realise when you do, then you think, holy fuck, I have more in common with more people than I care to.
Oh, exactly.
That's
the thing.
Yeah. And this is why, again, one of the things that motivated me about what I'm doing is just mainly sharing my own stuff. I think, well, my story is my story and everyone's their own story, but nonetheless, there's all these themes that are relevant. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm at an age now where thankfully I give way less fucks than I ever did. so I will just put my version of events out there and leave it at that. And again, in the hope that some people will resonate with something and get something out of it. And I think as people like you and I that have some level of profile, if you will, where we can actually exert influence in a positive way.
Yeah.
By actually, being examples of it.
Totally. I think one of the things that, in terms of that kind of the idea that age gives you that kind of perspective on what really matters and what doesn't. And it's one of those things where I remember my mum saying it. She's like, I wouldn't want to be 20 again, for all the money in the world. And you kind of think, well, that's kind of crazy. And it's like, and I said, well, what's the reasoning behind that? You go back to being vibrant and young, beautiful, and all the above with all the possibilities in the world. And she went, the flat out insecurity of it.
Yeah.
The flat out not being able to just, being so overwhelmed by what you thought was important, other people's impressions of you and everything like that. And you still find it to this day when you're dealing with people at that kind of 18 to 19 through to kind of 25 usually. There's a real sensitivity to what they're doing, what other people perceive of them. And I think around 30, around that era, most people kind of flip into this other mode where they start to recognize not giving a fuck about certain things. I mean, this is broad generalization.
Yeah, of course,
but
absolutely.
I do think that particularly in the music industry, that's one of those other factors, the age and experience, where you're dealing with a lot of people in that kind of age group where they put massive amounts of importance into things that don't matter long term.
Totally.
And ignore things that will really matter in 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. No, I agree, mate. No, I think that's why it's so important to think about why are you doing anything?
Oh, totally.
For that matter. Yeah. It's like you be able to have an honest conversation with yourself and say, okay, well, why am I getting involved? Why am I doing this? And if you can't honestly answer it because it's something that you feel is true to you, and it's not about money, it's not about prestige, and again, I think sometimes as artists or creatives, adulation, validation, it's a human thing, but it's when we start to attribute our self-worth to all those things.
Oh yeah, and that's a great lesson to learn. And but I think by and large, there's this other thing where there's a certain amount of recognition and applause that people who are driven to do this want out of the world, and you recognise it. And I think that if you manage that properly, it's healthy. But at the same time, one of the key areas in managing that is aligning your self-worth with what you see reflected in the real world all the time.
Yeah.
And obviously that can be a tremendous motivator, but my God, it's crushing when it doesn't go well.
Yeah. No.
And you slowly kind of, I think, learn how to cope with that kind of thing. And I have this talk that I do around these areas and around the areas that artists tend to struggle with, and one of them is how to deal with criticism and how to determine what criticism really is.
Yeah.
And criticism that's designed to build you up is tremendously important.
Yeah.
But criticism that's designed to actually tear you to pieces and extract points and ego points is tremendously destructive. But you've got that is if you're going to be in the public, you've got to be able to determine which one is which.
Yeah.
And this comes down to really your inner circle. And if you have a positive inner circle, they're usually people who will criticize you because they want to see you do better, genuinely, and don't want to hurt you. But if you have a negative inner circle, they'll be peppered with people who are actually trying to bring you down.
Yeah.
And that is a very important part, I think, of some artists or groups of artists that are able to keep going, is that they've actually manage to get a good inner circle in place,
Peer group,
or
man.
good peer group, friends, parents, all the above. What are you doing?
I'm just destructing my studio, mate. That's a good. No, you're absolutely right. That the people that you spend the most time with, it's crucial, and in my own experience, I've had to do a serious inventory about that at one stage when that whole concept was. When I was first told about your peer group, I took that initially as a bit of a snobby attitude.
I mean, I think it can be. And I think
And then and that was the initial thing. But then as it was more explained to me, and it just made sense. It's like, well, you are the sum of the average of the 5 people. Whatever Jim Rohn said back in the day. And sometimes people may know. As I had some friends who I knew it was unhealthy, but it was the fear of loss, the fear I wasn't good enough to be. Why would these people want to deal with me? And again, that's your own psychological hurdle that that you need to get over. But like you said, if you've got good supportive friends, environment around you, those sort of and people to keep you accountable. I think that's a great thing. Is again, it's having friends there who can call you out in your bullshit. And you understand that it's coming from the right place.
Totally.
Whereas the whole internet stuff, it's interesting because for me, I've only just started getting more and more of that of late, which I guess I understand is a good sign, but it still requires you to sort of have an awareness, and as you said before, understand, where is it coming from? Because the truth is too, Tom Larkin, is that within the context of a criticism, even though it may be coming at you or me with nothing but piss and vinegar, sometimes there actually can be a kernel of truth, and without realizing they're actually giving a gem, even though it's covered in shit, but nonetheless, there's still a gem in there.
Totally.
But again, if you're open enough to sort of see for what it is.
Well, I think one of the things is that if you can try and avoid the idea of being right all the time.
Dude.
I mean, and this is the thing, is that when I talk about the stuff to do with artist development or mental health or how creative process work or best practices for artists or all these kind of things, I'm still an open book ready for the next thing, and I will scrub out anything that doesn't add up as it comes through. If it doesn't, and to a certain extent, that conversation is breaking as we go, and we're going to find certain things where it takes a different form from the one perhaps that I'm talking about right now, or is general kind of knowledge right now.
Sure.
We're gonna find those things, and I think you got to be open to the fact that these things will not necessarily ring true, and particularly in time. Something that creates a change now, and this is art as well. If I like to talk about. I think, generally, if you talk about the culture of music, it's like a round table conversation.
Absolutely.
And it's like anything that's in front of everybody. And oftentimes an artist will stand out because they stand up at that table and say something artistically that is just, mind-blowing in that context. Turn it, go forward 20 years, and that same artist saying the same thing is old school, old hat, irrelevant. And that's part of the thing you got to remember as an artist or wherever you're at, is that you may have insight and relevance now, but you need to be open to continually learning and bringing in new things in order to have relevance later.
And to be able to say, I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
I fucked up. And I think as you get older, it's harder, and especially if you've been living a certain way or a certain mindset or belief that was so ingrained in you for 30, 40 years of your life, and all of a sudden you come to this point of like, oh shit. And that's a fucking hard place to be, because again, it's almost like Santa Claus isn't real type stuff in a weird kind of way. So I think as you get older, it gets harder because your ego gets in the way. Because who wants to ever fucking say, well, the last 40 years of my life was fucking just nothing but bullshit.
Well, and I think that when you look at that in an artistic context, when you make an album, you've got an invested time in your life, and if you are going to live that album for 18 months, once it comes out, you're usually living it for 12 months before it comes out.
Yeah.
So that's a fair whack of time. And if you make a shit album, and you haven't done it well, and sometimes that's only perceivable in retrospect.
Yeah.
Because you're in it at the time. At the same time, part of what makes an album, if good or not, isn't necessarily its success, it's often to do with how you went about doing it. And sometimes, particularly when you have a long career, and we've been in the same band for 29 years now. We're going to do our 30th year next year. 29 years. And one of the things you realise is that when you look at it like that, each of your albums is a conversation with the next.
Yeah.
Right? And then you start looking at the continuum and you realise, this is evolution. And so long as we're continually trying to reinvent and work out the next thing to say and bringing new shit to the table, sometimes it's just going to fail.
Yeah.
And then other times it comes right, it comes into focus.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So how long can the She Hard? You say She Hard, right? I mean,
we say She Hard. Well, I mean that was the original. I mean the whole thing about the name, which is I think comically fucking stupid, and a great lesson, which was essentially, we're at high school. We're all stoned in art class. John does this drawing, and in the weekend before we'd gotten to school, we'd watched Dune, the film, and at the end, because Frank Herbert used a lot of Middle Eastern Islamic terms in Dune, and the big battle at the end was a jihad, right? And we had misheard that. And John had gone, that's cool, the battle at the end of Dune, that's a good name for a band. And we're 15 and 16, we're young.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. And so he does this massive logo for Shihad, not Jihad, Shihad, which he thought was the name of the battle at the end. And of course that became like, oh yeah, that's awesome, that's cool. And that became, the band name. And it went on from there, and it was kind of like, it was hard to say. It was a wrong word in the first place. It was like, and I remember both my parents were going, "Ooh, I don't know if you should be calling." And this was right back in, late 80s.
Pre 9/11.
Yeah, late 80s.
Yeah,
and they were going, "Oh, that's." I mean, my dad was a diplomat, so he knew. And so he.
Did he have diplomatic immunity?
Yes, he did. I've actually got his red passport, which is a full diplomatic immunity passport at home, the old one.
So what
1970s.
So what is that like? What does that actually mean? When we talk about diplomatic immunity, could I be like?
1970s diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, like could I could be balling with like I don't know, a couple of keys in my folder.
It basically means you go through customs without going through customs.
Okay.
They can't look at your bags. They can't search
contraband,
you.
Whatever.
And it was a Cold War remnant, right? It was basically, the idea was that if you were in another territory, that agents or people with certain agendas could compromise you with the local laws and have leverage over you and make you do certain things. So they put in diplomatic immunity, which meant that the representatives of the country could not be affected by these things. That was it. But for insofar as I ever saw it, it was just your bags go. You go through customs. No one looks at your bags. No one looks at your shit. You don't. You just flash the passport. You're in.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Just think of it.
Would have been very, very bad if I was a teenager with that.
Yeah.
It was lucky I was young enough.
Yeah. What intrigues me sometimes, I think about people that work at that upper echelon of you talk about CIA, FBI, all that sort of shit, and because the thing is, the fact of the matter is there have been people who have been taken out by that goes on. That's not just fucking Hollywood bullshit. Of course. Could you imagine, seriously, Tom Larkin, imagine just fucking you and I was sitting at having a meeting with some fucking high level highfalutin fucking people, and we're just sitting here. We're gonna fucking get rid of this cunt over here.
Yeah.
And we're gonna sit and plot and we're talking about life and fucking death, Tom Larkin. This is no bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And yet we're just gonna have our snifters and a coronis and fucking we're gonna just. But it fucks with my head to think though that you have this where human life is so cheap and everyone's just a fucking pawn on essentially a big game, but people can their lives are literally just negotiated like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
Oh, it's nuts.
How do you fucking live with yourself? I mean, there are people who fucking instigate downfall of people, death of people, cause loads of fucking damage. I mean, and they're basically the domino that fucking set the ball in motion. And once it's set, it's no turning back. I don't know, dude. I couldn't live with myself. I would find
Well,
that
I
so
mean,
fucking hard.
No, of course, and it's very hard for people with any kind of empathy to engage in that. And I kind of regard myself as, I mean, I remember, one of the things when I was a kid, I loved guns.
Yeah.
I loved them.
Yeah.
Like they're just awesome, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one of my aunt's cousins, they had a house and they let me out with kind of the air rifle, and and I shot up one of the guest houses because I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
And I just thought exploding things, big loud noises, just the best. One day, I was at a mate's place and we had a bunch of air rifles, and it was like, oh, shoot the birds as they come through. I shot a bird, and I never forgot it. And it was like I couldn't even live with myself. I couldn't sleep that night.
Yeah.
Because I'd actually shot a bird. Like just So unfortunately, I'm too empathetic.
Yeah.
You're probably too empathetic to be able to do these things.
Way too much. I don't know what wiring goes on in something.
Well, it's like it's psychopathy, really,
Yeah.
and it's basically there, and what that is a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
And I think that for the most part, most problems in human interaction can be cured by using empathy.
Oh, without doubt.
Going back to George Orwell, right? He talks about when he was a soldier in World War One, and he talks about shooting across trenches, and there was a cluster of German soldiers, and he was shooting at them, picking them off, and one of them came up and was in the middle of going to the toilet and was pulling his pants up, and as soon as he saw that, couldn't shoot him because he became humanized.
Yeah.
He wasn't a soldier. He was some poor human trying to take a shit in the middle of the battlefield.
Yeah.
And that empathy thing, like we all have it. That's that killer instinct. We're able to actually shut down empathy. And I think that for the most part, the more we can actually turn that on, the better we are as humans.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
And that's basically it. But if someone comes in here with a knife and they're going to take people out, your chemistry will eliminate your empathy and all.
Oh no, that's
it's just in us.
Yeah. Without doubt. What fucks me over when it comes to soldiers who fight wars? Just you're going out. I mean, okay, I understand the concept of serving my fucking country and all this sort of stuff, but Jesus Christ, most soldiers who go in the front line, not that I've met that many of them, but just from what I've seen, nobody wants to fucking kill anyone, mate. Really?
No, not really. No, I don't.
I mean, in a self-defense, life, die or fucking, fucking be killed, be killed. I can understand that. I haven't been in that situation myself, so I can't speak. And I hope I never have to. But for the most part, I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine these guys just going out there, and when it comes to the actual face-to-face reality of that situation, fuck, that's got to be hard.
No, totally.
Because like I said, you feel.
Well, they talk about that syndrome where you kind of have that battlefield syndrome where you do flip. There is that switch, and you flip, and you do use that inherent ability to kill, and oftentimes that whole PTSD or any of that kind of trauma comes not from the immediate effect. It comes from when they come back and they no longer need to do it, and they try to reintegrate into civilian life, and then they think through everything that they've had to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can go back and think through things in relationships or interactions that you've had or ways that you've handled situations and have the same kind of thing going, oh, I was really angry about that and I behaved in a bad way. Or I was like, felt that I was threatened, so I did the wrong thing. So, those are the things that I think we all can see how these things happen. But look, I mean, as the world has grown, we have wars on an industrial scale. That's basically what used to be local skirmishes are now on an industrial scale. Been killing each other since the dawn of time.
That's it.
I think.
Boys, I want to just interrupt you. It is 7:40. Before you guys clock off, I do want to ask Caleb has a question, which is sort of quite close to both your hearts at the moment, and it's simply that he's a young audio engineer. He's just a guy trying to find work, and he wants to know if you guys have any tips on how a young guy trying to get into the industry in Melbourne can get a foot in the door.
Yeah, well,
you're really good at this.
Okay.
Go for it.
One of the things I've been saying of late, and I still believe this, is that the best way to get your foot in the door is to build the fucking door to put your own foot through. So we're in a different time now, and while we still have internships, it's not the same as it was back in the day. So Caleb, I would recommend, if that's what you want to do, just go out there and do it. I would be I'll be actively networking with as many people as possible. And before you decide you want to hit anyone up, people think it's a numbers game, but think carefully about who you want to work with and why you want to work with them, because the way you approach a potential employer, I mean, they hear the stories all the time, as I do, and you just get to know what's authentic and what's genuine. And so, do your research, find out where, if you wanted to, hang out at a certain studio or be interned by a certain someone, do your homework, do your research, find out, like, do I really feel, based on what I've uncovered, I really want to be this person. So when you interact with them, they know that, oh, this is a well thought out and considered proposal. This is just not, I love you, baby, I need you, baby, just because you just happen to be the next person in the fucking phone book or, on the web. So, so network, build relationships, look towards ultimately setting up your own shop. And you don't really need that much money these days to do it. It's affordable, it's accessible, the technology, back when I started, you couldn't just download fucking crack fucking tape machines and shit like that. So, but anyway, just go for it, Caleb. Just, work on building, relationships is everything. So if you can create relationships with people and when you get involved, do it from a selfless place. Get involved, help, because that's how you're going to show what you do and what you're about. But again, just don't do it with an expectation that because it's so competitive out there, and unless you're authentic in how you approach it and you do it from your heart and you're passionate about it. And as Tom talked about before, you go the long arc, and you become a lifer. It'll all work itself out, mate. It'll all work itself out, So go for it, dude. That's all I can say. Now I'm aware that. No.
Oh, no. I mean, I was just going to say, in terms of an audio career, I think that the most important thing is to have skill and empathy again with musicians. So understanding how to be a musician. Understanding music, understanding the emotive quality of music, because that's ultimately what we're doing, is we're trying to make emotion show up between two speakers, in a remote area. So you've got to remember that you're trying to communicate that emotion to someone else, so that the way that you interact with the artist, you have to be able to get that out of them as well. So that's really important. Outside of, I'm just adding to, I'm not giving my own version of what Jack said. Yeah.
No, and that's great, and appreciate that. That input. No, it's beautiful. So good luck, Caleb. You do it. Anything else? Is there anyone else you want to answer real quick, or?
That's it. That's all I can see.
Okay. No, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. All right then, mate. Because I'm aware. I'm unfortunately came a little bit short, but you got somewhere to be, and I appreciate you making time out on Sunday to come and see me. It's been good. Always good talking with you, Tom.
You too, mate.
Thank
you, sir.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you
so much.
Absolutely.
Well, and Tom will be joining me on my next Mastering Life seminar or panel Q&A event, 6th of August at the Croxton Park. So you went down a fucking storm last time, mate. So so it was, we had to get you back, and maybe this time around you'll be able to talk a bit more about it on the day, for people to come along.
Absolutely.
And we're going to record the event and put it out later. But again,
totally.
we just I think I'm just so much a believer in what you're trying to do.
You too.
Thanks
very much so.
What you do. And yes, for the record, I do have an involvement with with Tom, and he pays me to go and do the talk and whatnot. But it's not just about the fact that there's a fee involved. It's more about I've just now learned to be more discerning about where I want to go and put time and effort, whether it's paid or not paid, because you want to believe in what it is you're spruiking. And
it's one of the things is that I think that whatever you do in life, you have to believe in it. And it's one of the things that possibly the one thing that as an artist manager is one of the most interesting things, is that as an artist manager, you're helping organize artists' lives, you're helping organize, helping bring possibility to them and everything like that. But one of the core things is that you have to believe in it. You're going out there selling it, and you have to believe in it. And it's and I think that believing in whatever it is you're selling, whatever it is, and when I say you're selling, that's whatever you're on about. It's one of the most important things. And I think, that's why you can smell car salesmen, or car salespeople a mile off, because they know they're bullshitting you. You can see they know they're bullshitting you.
Yeah.
And, it's one of the things that I find that I can't actually sell anything that I don't
Yeah, and I think I don't think you can actually really sell. People love to buy anyway.
Totally.
But no one wants to be sold to.
No, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's the distinct.
And I suppose you're using the sell as like a whatever you're on about.
Yeah.
If you're on about the Sea Shepherd, you gotta believe it.
Yeah, no, without doubt, and you can't bullshit a bullshitter, Tom. Like
that's right.
So on that note, mate, I know you got to get out. We'll get you back in. We'll see you anyway down at the Q&A and industry panel. And mate, what can I say? Honestly, it's fucking awesome having you here.
Thank you.
It's great to have this conversation. We're no doubt we'll have more of them. And and again, mate, it's just been last 2 years have been fucking awesome.
It's been great. Yeah. And much more to come.
Oh yeah, no, without doubt,
much more to come.
Without doubt. It's I see we're on the precipice of doing individually or collectively really good things in more in a very meaningful way.
Totally. Oh, can I just take 1 minute just for anyone out there, because I know that the mental health stuff has come up a lot for us. Obviously, Lifeline is a big thing.
Yeah.
But the one thing, and it surprises me how few people actually know about Support Act.
Yeah.
As an organisation, Support Act is an organisation. Now, look, I know these people. I actually try and I donate to them because I think that what they do is tremendously important. But they provide funds and assistance for musicians in crisis, and that may be financial crisis, medical crisis, mental crisis, anything. But musicians in crisis, Support Act, amazing organisation.
Yeah.
And one that is going to, I think, play an increasingly vital role going forward from here. But I just the only reason I want to say that is just because so many people just don't seem to know what they do.
Yeah.
And I know that many people in the industry do, but if many people, if we can just remember that one organisation, because that's another phone you can pick up and reach out to. And, there's a parachute there.
And particularly with being musicians, because you're talking to people that know your language, understand the journey, been through their own stuff as well. So there's probably maybe more comfort, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking to someone in the lingo they understand and culturally understand each other, who get it
exactly
on that level. So, all right, my friend.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks for coming in.
See you all.
It's beautiful to have you here, mate. So, thank you.
One
So, all right. All right. Well, we're out of here. Thank you very much for watching, guys. To the Backline Project crew. Love you, fucks. Thanks for your hard work, Tom. Thank you so much. Best of luck. We'll talk to you soon. And for all you guys out there, thanks for participating. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the comments. You got Tom's socials up, so if people want to follow.
We're up a second ago.
All right.
Support Act link.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Thank you.
Let's put the Support Act link as well, so people know that. So we're out of here. Thanks very much indeed, guys. Love you, fucks. Please be nice to each other, but more importantly, be nice to yourselves. See you later, guys.